Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Michael and Patty Show. Patty, are you with us today?
Yes, I'm with us.
Good to see that. It's great to have you as a co-host of our little podcast thing here. It's an absolutely picture-perfect, beautiful day when we recorded this at the end of March. If you haven't listened to our podcast before, we're both real estate agents. Patty's a broker. And we discover or we discuss over 41 years of full-time PEI real estate stuff and anything Prince Edward Island related.
Yeah.
Pretty well cover it in a nutshell.
That pretty much covers it. Some of our experiences, little stories, lots of good information.
And if you need any more information, check out our YouTube sites. We have a weekly newsletter, Twitter feeds, threads, and visit gov.pe.ca, or if you're a tourist or maybe not a tourist and you're looking for a free map and magazine, I think they're still sending them out, or you can get them in digital format, is the magazine covering all the tourist destinations, and they have a foldable map, which is kind of nice in addition to your GPS. Moving into topic number 1. How many times have you sold a house and then you found out your seller has nowhere to go?
That doesn't happen to me because I usually do my screening at my seller's intake process to make sure we have a complete plan in place. Has this happened to you?
It's never happened to me, but I do know that you and I have both gone out in listing appointments before, and we've interviewed the sellers, particularly with people that are older, and they just have nowhere to go, and we refuse to take the listing, only to find out a week later someone's listed grandma's house and they're kicking her out in the street because it sold in less than a month.
That we have definitely experienced. It was an unfortunate situation. But yes, most times when you do meet with a seller, I know yours and my common practice is to ask them what's the total plan. We're not just in to list the house. We're to make sure that homeowner is set up for something going forward.
So I received a phone call last week, and the lady said that, she was inquiring on a listing that I had, which is sold. And she said she's been checking realtor.ca, which is the absolute best source for active listings if you're looking for real estate in PEI or anywhere in Canada for that matter. And she's been checking it every 3 to 4 hours. Does that sound like a good plan to you?
No, that does not sound like a good plan. She doesn't have a realtor?
That was the next question I asked. I said, do you not have a real estate agent? And she says, yes, my real estate agent just sold my house. But they've sort of disappeared off the face of the earth and didn't bother to set her up for success from the beginning. What should she have in the form of a search setup so this doesn't happen?
Well, this is really unfortunate. And I'm sorry to whoever you are, if you are listening to this and you recognize the story. However, a buyer who is looking for a property should have a buyer's agent representative. Doing this on your own is a little bit crazy in some ways because there's systems in place to make this so much easier for her. Instead of, I can only imagine the stress and anxiety having to go back in and check again and then check in a couple more hours. A custom collaboration site that her listing agent should have given her a full service. It sounds like they only partly taken care of her, but to provide a full service real estate experience to a client is to, if they have something to sell, help them sell the property, but also set them up for success with the custom collaboration site so that they are a very well-informed buyer looking for properties also going forward to hopefully time everything. We just did this with an elderly couple in Charlottetown who needed to sell, but they also needed to buy. And we provided the full scope of what, in my opinion, we should be providing. And it all worked out perfect. It was closing. We timed it a week in between with a bridge financing in place so that they weren't stressed trying to get out of their home that they'd been in for 20, 30 plus years, but that's unfortunate, Michael.
So they had 2 weeks to move from one house to the other, which was kind of nice. Thanks for doing that. The bottom line is you list your house for sale. The first thing you should be doing if you're looking at other houses is get your agent to set up a collab site, which is basically an automated search that will send you new listings automatically via email that fit within your parameters.
And in real time.
Right, and in real time. The other thing you want to do is, if you don't have somewhere else to live, you may want to fix that, because that is a major issue. Or I suppose you could make your sale contract, your purchase and sale agreement, contingent on you finding something else. But typically people are a little more organized than that. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Most times, if they're being properly informed and advised. If not, this is a big unknown. And I think, Michael, between us having done this for so many years, we kind of take it for granted, the whole process. But if you have, you're a first-time seller or a first-time buyer, this is all unwalked territory, and you don't have a clue what the whole process looks like or what you should be expecting.
Good stuff. Next topic. I understand that you are responsible, or this podcast is responsible, for bringing at least one or two new buyers to the island. You actually got to meet one in your office, which I confused, because there is actually another one that same week that's moving to PEI because of this podcast. For what reason?
Yeah, so it's actually happened a few times now. I've had a few clients that feel very well informed. They may have been looking at all the Maritimes, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island, and in trying to do their research, looking for information while they live somewhere else across Canada, our podcast helped them become very educated, well-informed, and understanding the lifestyle that they could have and live, and also what to expect in real estate services, how to begin the process, because we've covered so many of these topics in previous episodes that, yes, one of our latest inquiries was very appreciative, made the decision that Prince Edward Island is where he wanted to be with his family, and a great client to work with because they're already so educated, despite the fact that this is probably going to be their first time moving across the country.
And one of the things you may wish to do is, if you're looking at buying real estate, get one of these real-time searches set up, but also visit the government website, gov.pe.ca, and they have a newsletter that's quite active and runs in continuity with their Twitter feed, which is something else you may want to follow. This newsletter will automatically email you any stuff that's coming up on the island, including bridge closures, road closures, hospital closures, problems at old age homes. What else does it send? Basically everything. Announcements from politicians, what's happening in the province. It's all free. I would strongly suggest you do subscribe to that newsletter. And what came out here this week is there is a new map showing all the locations of the PEI sport and recreational facilities. So they have a new map online that's interactive. So now you can get your jogging in and your weightlifting and, swimming, where all the facilities are.
Yeah, and it's a very powerful
and yoga
and helpful tool if you're contemplating what kind of support or infrastructure do, some of these communities that you might be looking at real estate in, what can you expect? And I loved when I seen this. I've already saved this link. It's in we have a board system, many boards, but one of the boards are helpful or links to be able to share with our clients. And I made sure I added this one to that list or that board so that we could make sure that our clients are very well informed, because you look at real estate. I know when I moved here, and I don't know how much research you put into relocating to PEI, Michael, many years ago. None. Okay. Well, when I did...
First thing I had to do was locate it on a map.
Yes. Well, I did pass geography in school, so I did know where Prince Edward Island was. I just was never here before. But I was very concerned because I had small children. What kind of infrastructure can I expect? And if I chose, which I did at that time, I had moved to Summerside, what could I expect for services for my children? Was there hockey, because I had children in hockey and children in dance and, different sports and activities. And this map, not only does it show you where they are, but it allows you to click on them to get more information of these facilities and for them to provide a little more detail. So very, very powerful, very good tool. If you are considering Prince Edward Island and don't know what to expect in part of your research, highly recommend it.
Summerside probably has the most major sports complex on the island right now. And I believe they're talking about doing something in Charlottetown, are they not? Wasn't that in the newsletter?
Yeah, they're renovating the Eastlink Center. There's a major upgrades being carried out and done to that facility because we don't really have a lot of land available in Charlottetown to be creating a new sports center. But Summerside, I will give them credit. They have, what is the Summerside?
I don't know. They
Credit
renamed
Union.
it.
Yeah, I know there's some. It is a great facility. It has a walking track.
I think it's the Summerside Credit Union, Bell Alliant, Rogers, Amazon Center.
It is a great center. They have fitness gyms, pools, a regular or a full-size ice rink, plus a smaller size one, a bowling alley, if the bowling alley is still there.
Enough from your TV commercial. We're
Yeah,
not getting paid
great.
to solicit the Summerside Sports Center. Seller thinks that by raising the price after they do renovations is going to sell their overpriced house. Never a good idea. If your house is overpriced, and that's the feedback that you're getting, either verbally or otherwise, chances are you need to lower the price, not put more improvements in and raise the price. How can you tell if the property's overpriced? Typically, you will get a pile of showings and you will get no offers because all you're doing is helping somebody else sell their house because they look at your house that's on for $500 and the other one's on at $425 and they buy that. So if you do have a house and you're planning on putting money into it and raising the price, I would probably suggest you talk to your agent or your broker because there are things that you can do in this particular case that cost next to nothing, clean, declutter, and paint, that will make it more attractive and probably get you some offers. I would not suggest going in there and replacing kitchens and bathrooms and flooring and all that sort of stuff because you're already overpriced and you're just going to price yourself even further out of the market.
So can I ask you a question, Michael? No. How do you know if you're a property owner and you want to not improve your home for sale, but improve your home for yourself and your own enjoyment? How do you know how much or at what point do you stop putting money in?
You would talk to your agent or broker that hopefully is an expert, which is deemed to be an agent with over 10,000 hours experience, over 1,000 transactions, and ask them what they suggest you do to get the most amount of money down the road, assuming you're going to sell, with the least amount of expense.
Okay. There's another easy answer. If they don't want to have to rekindle, hopefully, if you're a client of mine, you can call me anytime. I would go ahead and assist and advise you. But if you don't feel you have a realtor, it's been too long, and you want to do some updates and improvements, a really good guideline or bar is take a look at your area. You don't want to have a subdivision where, say, all the homes in that area are 350, 400, and now you've just increased the value of yours up to 650 and expect to be able to receive 650 when, again, you're the best home on an average price residential property subdivision on Prince Edward Island.
And that's been one of the things in Prince Edward Island. It's always been a challenge when it comes to higher end listings, is that we just don't have a lot of high end real estate. Like looking at other places that I know of where I was born, I mean, waterfront homes are $8, $10, $12, $14 million. Here, we don't see too many listings outside of Charlottetown or Stratford that are over $1 million because the other listings are pulling those values down. Now we're seeing more and more, but we certainly don't have houses on the water for $8 million.
Something to be mindful of. Don't over-invest or overspend. Unless you're not concerned and you're going to stay in it for 50 years, then it doesn't really matter. But you should always be mindful of, if my circumstances were to change and I did go to or need to sell this home, do not over-invest into that home because you're probably not going to see that money back.
Unless you're just doing it for your enjoyment and you don't care about the money. You're looking at moving to the province and you want to reach out to a real estate agent to see properties. You've been to realtor.ca and you thought it would be your plan just to email an agent randomly and tell them you're going to be in on Thursday and Friday and you want to see houses between 2 and 4 on both of those days. Is that maybe a bad way of doing things or a really bad way? Because I usually get those emails and I either send them to somebody else or delete them because there's too much of a wild card there.
And that happens more often than not. People feel it's no different than a travel agent. They feel, well, I can book my flight myself. I can book my hotel myself. I can book my car rental myself. So they feel the same when it comes to a house hunting trip. I'll just call every single listing agent. I'll arrange and book this all.
They're not doing that. What they're doing is they're sending you an email. They're giving you a list of 20 houses that they expect you to drop everything for because they're coming here on Thursday and Friday and you need to cater to them even though you've never had a conversation with them. You don't know if they have a house to sell. You don't know if they have the financial capability. So it's a little different from a travel agent in that sense.
If they're trusting one agent, first of all, I do give them a little bit of credit that they've at least, I don't know how they picked this realtor. That seems a little bit odd that they would just put all their eggs on one basket and trust one realtor. That's not usually my experience, but the recommendation, if you are looking to book a house hunting trip, you should at the very least have a phone call. As much as the buyer is screening the agent and the agent is also screening the buyer to make sure this is a mutually agreeable relationship, or set up a Zoom. I Zoom with many of my clients, always have for many, many years before COVID even, just to get a face-to-face. So I know, one, who I'm going to be meeting at a house. Usually your first meeting is at a house at a showing. I at least know who I'm going to expect. So that would be my first recommendation. For depending on what side of the transaction, doesn't matter. You should be setting up a phone conversation and or Zoom meeting.
So this is when you're walking around the office in a suit top and your gym shorts for your Zoom calls?
I do not dress like that. Is that how you do your meetings?
Well, of course. You just put a suit top on and a dress shirt and you walk around in your gym shorts and your running shoes.
So if you're calling Michael and requesting a Zoom meeting, ask him to stand up.
How this person found the agent is they found the agent through this podcast and they contacted me. And my challenge is a couple of things. First of all, I want to talk to them and I have a buyer's intake, as you do.
Yes.
So we have a series of questions we're going to ask them to make their trip work for them so we can find them the properties they're looking for and not waste their time, not waste our time. And hopefully they're in a position at that point to write a contract or at least on their way to understanding PEI real estate.
Yeah, and to maximize their time because it is going to be limited, to make sure that we do get the best out of, say, the 3 days that they are here for a house hunting trip. And we haven't gone down rabbit trails that, had I honed in and done my intake process properly, I would have been able to save them a lot of time. And now they're not getting onto the plane or having to leave the island and feeling like that was unproductive. I didn't accomplish anything. Now I'm reliant on FaceTime or, some sort of video showing and not getting to experience the property in person.
So contact the agent, do a Zoom call or a phone call, and this also makes sure that you can click, because if you're going to spend a few days together or weeks or months looking for houses, you want to make sure that you get along, right?
Yeah, who wants to go shopping, regardless whether it's house hunting, grocery shopping, clothing shopping with somebody that they can't stand or feel like they're not going to enjoy their company? This should be a fun experience.
Years ago, when I was a newbie, I was dealing with a husband and wife, and the husband was taking on some highfalutin CEO job or something of a company on the island. And they had 2 days to look at houses. We scheduled the houses. The wife knew what times we were looking at these houses. The husband gets in the car and he says to me, well, I only have an hour because I have a meeting at whatever it was, 2 o'clock, and we were meeting at 1 o'clock. So at that point, I said, get out of the car, and I left. I didn't do that, but basically that's what can happen because you're coming to. I had another appointment. I met with the guy, and he had a Zoom call in the middle of our meeting. It was a doctor. Can you imagine?
Well, maybe the patient needed his...
No. This was a scheduled Zoom call in the middle of the meeting. He says, "Oh, sorry, I've got a Zoom call scheduled for this time." I'm thinking, didn't we have a meeting scheduled? The bizarre stuff we do.
Yes, I agree.
Agents asking how much water frontage there is and if it's IRAC applicable. If you're not familiar with IRAC, it's spelled IRAC, and the website ends in a .pe.ca. And just go to property or lands protection. It will tell you all about it. But essentially, there is a rule or law in PEI that if you are a non-resident purchaser or a corporation, maybe it a PEI corporation or otherwise, you cannot purchase more than 165 feet or 5 acres of land accumulatively. So I had an agent ask me, a new agent, if this particular property had over 165 feet of frontage, where can we find that information so I never get this phone call again? Because it was a stupid question.
GeoLink allows us to measure.
GeoLink, the agricultural computer, the Lands Online computer, which is the farming computer, the cut sheet has this information on it. But the other thing this agent probably didn't do is ask the purchaser if they owned any property already on the island because it's on an accumulative basis. You had a finger up? Go ahead.
Yes, because that's exactly what ends up getting missed. You may feel, if you're an agent listening to this, in this particular property does not require IRAC. And if you don't do your buyer's intake and find out, what's your ties to PEI? Do you already own land on Prince Edward Island? If you don't do your due diligence out of the gate on the onset, not only have you set yourself up for a bad situation, but you just set that buyer up for a bad situation because not everybody understands that we do have our own set of laws here when it pertains or as it pertains to land ownership. So yes, if you already own an acre of land and it's not within a municipality, because there's some municipalities that you can't own an acre or less than an acre of land within that community and it doesn't interfere with your ownership. If you did end up buying 5 acres, that's all stuff that you need to discuss either with IRAC or your lawyer to find out if that is your case. But we're just going to speak very general. If you own an acre, you're not an island resident, you cannot purchase more than 4 acres.
On a cumulative basis.
On a cumulative basis.
Without going through IRAC. So to go through IRAC, is that a big deal?
No, and that's the other thing, because most will feel that, well, now I can't purchase it. I have to go through IRAC. What does that mean?
Well, that's been something the Nova Scotia realtors have been telling buyers for years that, you can't go over to Prince Edward Island because you can't buy over 165 feet of frontage or 5 acres, which is nonsense. You just need to make an application. There's a 1% fee. If it's turned down, a part of that fee may or may not be refunded. And my advice is always use a lawyer that's well experienced at real estate law, particularly in the forms of dealing with IRAC. Good advice?
That is great advice. And make sure that you do your due diligence. If you are considering purchasing a larger piece of land or water frontage, your realtor should be able to assist you, advise you, guide you. One of the things, too, is you see a brand new listing, you're a buyer from Quebec or Ontario, and you get all excited. This is a brand new listing. I want to purchase this property. And it truly is. It was only on the market for 5 days or 10 days. You would not be able to technically purchase it until it has been advertised or promoted to island residents for a minimum of 90 days. You can still offer...
And it has to be at MLS.
MLS.
Or should be.
It is preferred, again, to set the seller up for success in order to be approved or to have their buyer approved to acquire that property. But there is an advertising.
On to other things.
Good.
The Prince Edward Island real estate agent has decided that it would be a great idea to introduce all the agents and brokers to the longest course we've ever taken in the history of the association. It's 6 hours of fun-filled and fact-filled information on everybody's favorite subject, FINTRAC. Not only do you get to sit behind a computer for 6 hours taking this course, but you'll be completely entertained by all the animations and cartoons you'll be able to watch.
Yeah, so we are required on Prince Edward Island, as per our association and our bylaws, to take 3 credits, continuing education credits that are approved by our association or CREA. And our association, probably 7-8 years ago, ended up, just to try to increase the bar of our members, incorporated 1 extra credit. That is a requirement. So this year's additional credit is FINTRAC, which stands for the Financial Transactions and Report Analysis Center of Canada. It is the law. So if your realtor is asking to identify you or for your ID, we are supposed to be identifying our clients in person. If not, we have to fill out another form called a mandatory identifier. So if you don't cut corners on this, these are our legal requirements within our industry. The whole purpose of, and I'm just going to read it straight from the government site, is the Financial Transaction and Report Analysis Center of Canada is Canada's financial intelligence unit and anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing supervisor. Its mandate is to facilitate the detection, prevention, and deterrence of money laundering and the financing of terrorist activities while ensuring the protection of personal information under its control.
Did you take this course?
I haven't taken the course yet. It just got released a week ago, Michael.
You need to get with it. As soon as I got that email, I took the course. And one thing I didn't realize about FINTRAC, because I've always thought it was kind of silly, and I'd love to see some reports as to what effectiveness it's had at the end of the day, because the last time I looked into this, it really didn't have any effectiveness whatsoever. So you can do some research and get us some data between now and next podcast.
Sure,
which we'll be taping this afternoon in an hour or so. FINTRAC was introduced not only in Canada, but variations of it have been introduced all through the modern world in a collaborative sense. So there was pressure from outside sources to create this entity. It just wasn't another make-work project for the Canadian federal government.
Yeah, and since we are considered frontline workers and we are supposed to be seeing our clients, working with them, it does make sense that realtors, I know it's a pain, but that we're the ones to identify the clients. The banks end up having to do FINTRAC. So there are different levels, which is why if you're a buyer listening to this, even sellers though, but if you're a buyer, the bank is going to be asking for your ID. Your realtor is going to be asking for your ID. I know there's lots of concerns with people, identity theft, and what are they using it for. Please know that the real estate brokerage, and you can ask them, what do you do with this? Where is this information being stored? So hopefully they have an answer. The correct legal responsibility that a brokerage has is we are to keep a hard copy in a locked safe for 5 years. If the property does not come up for investigation, it gets shredded and destroyed. I am looking forward to taking this course, Michael. Happy face sticker to you for getting it done so quickly. Very impressive.
Oh, I can see this is a subject you're very excited about. Moving along, in the newsletter this week, did you happen to see that the tolls on the bridge and the ferry may soon be gone?
Yes, I did see that there were talks on that.
So basically the way it works is you can come to the island for free, but if you want to leave, it's going to cost you big. Last time I checked, what was it, like $56 or more? Well, you would know better than me, Mrs. I'm traveling every week.
$50.25.
And how much is it for the ferry?
For the ferry, $89, I believe, to take the ferry.
And if you're taking the ferry, it's best to book in advance, is it not?
Yes, and just because I've been told many times over the years, if you just show up at the ferry terminal, that you can just get on for free and you don't have to pay, that is completely false, and you run the risk of not getting on. You will have to pay to get on the ferry, because I tried that, and they kind of snickered at me and said, you have to pay. And I said, I was told if I just showed up, almost like a standby, it doesn't work that way. So I did end up having to pay. That was a few years ago. So now I just know it's standard practice.
Both the bridge and the ferry are interesting ways to traverse to and from the island. I like the ferry if you have the time. It's pretty cool. You get to look around, take a boat ride, and they do have food and beverages there, bathrooms.
Yeah. And the ferry allows for you, it will save you a little bit of gas. It does save you the bridge fee, and it gets you to your destination, especially if you're traveling from Prince Edward Island. Here we leave from Wood Island, which is the far east point of Prince Edward Island.
Not that far.
Huh.
You'll save gas if you're coming from Charlottetown, because if you're coming from Charlottetown, you have to drive to Borden to get the bridge. And then if you're going to Halifax, you're driving back in the same direction, just drove to get to the bridge, whereas the ferry is more direct and it brings you right to Pictou, which brings you to Truro and then to Halifax. Next, what do we have? Selling properties in Canada with vendor take-back mortgages. I had a client this week say that he wanted to sell his property and he was willing to hold a mortgage. How is this different in Canada than in the U.S. as far as we understand, being non-accountants? Do you know?
No.
Let me educate you.
Good.
So if I have a property, let's say it's a piece of land, and somebody decides they want to buy it, and I say, I'm going to hold the mortgage for everything less $100. So $99,900, I'll hold the mortgage. When I go to file my taxes, even though I may only be receiving, say, $400 or $500 a month on that mortgage, I am paying capital gains on that $100,000 that I've received, because the mortgage plus the deposit equals $100,000. And as far as Canada Revenue Agency, CRA, looks at this, I've sold the property, and they will tell you they're not in the mortgage business. Whereas the States, it's different from what I understand. If you did the same thing in the States, you would only pay income tax on the payments received, not the gross sale amount. So in the case of this particular lot, if I bought it for, say, $10,000 40 years ago, I sold it for $100,000. In Canada, they look at it as I just made $90,000, even though I'm holding a mortgage and haven't received the money. Whereas in the States, they will just charge me on whatever monies I've received in the form of mortgage payments. And I've seen people that are Americans get nabbed on this big time, like into the six figures and more, because they were selling property on payments and didn't realize there's massive tax consequences. So they left and never came back.
That it makes sense that this is valuable information for Americans, because they do have to
Canadians too.
Oh, for Canadians, but Americans have to file what's called a clearance certificate to file one tax return based on capital gains made on Canadian property that they've owned. And if they're not aware that the difference in the systems, that could be very painful for sure. Yes, in Canada, I do like I think the American system makes sense.
It makes more sense. Bottom line is, if you're going to hold financing, talk to your accountant first.
Yes, if you're a seller considering holding financing and thinking that this is your best option in getting it sold, please be sure to speak to your accountant, because of, again, in the eyes of CRA, you've just made that total amount, whether it's $100,000 or $2 million. It could come back and be a little painful on your next tax filing.
Okay, we've got 9 seconds to wrap this up, Patty.
Thank you for listening to the Michael and Patty Show, otherwise known as MAPS, the Prince Edward Island podcast that hopefully informs and educates our listeners on buying and selling PEI properties, and a little bit of extra Prince Edward Island information that we try to speckle in to help our clients and our buyers considering Prince Edward Island for maybe their next move, making it a little bit of an easier decision and choice. Thanks for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in.
That was more than 9 seconds.
Sorry, Michael.
Be sure to follow, give us a star rating, feedback, and share this with all your friends, family, neighbors, and your household dog.
And if there's somebody that you know is considering Prince Edward Island for their next move, share with them this podcast. Hopefully it'll help them out.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.